Hello, my name is Helen and I am here to talk about possible client segmentation. So how to target your customer in which order the best and who to prioritize when you're building your product or service. So my favorite starting point for this would be to give advice that you probably hear a lot, which is creating basic empathy. So one of my favorite exercises throughout the years has been the simple question, who is he? So if I would ask, what's the age of that person? So usually one would think it's 40-something. If I would ask where do they live, I get all sorts of answers from US until south of Europe, to Norway, to Sweden. Or if I would ask what kind of phone that person has, usually it is Android. So, or if I ask about this lovely lady here, if I ask the means of transportation for her, usually I get either walking by foot or using a bicycle. Or if I ask what kinds of pets do they have, usually I get a dog who she takes to the office. But the matter of fact is, I don't know who these people are because I took those photos from a stock photo, and so far I have not met a single person who actually knows who they are. So by the end of the day, what we need to understand is that we cannot presume that we know another person if we don't do the legwork and actually go and ask who they are by the end of the day. So really understanding who our end customer is. But where it all starts is basically brainstorming who our end customer might be. And if we are lucky enough and if we have done the work correctly, then basically it is communicating that story to them in a specific order. So again, let's walk this through on a case study because it's easier to understand. So here's a product that I've been working with, which is a platform meant for professional interior designers working with loose furniture. So meaning what you can do is you can come to the product, you can type into the search engine, for example, yellow wooden legs sofa with what fits 4 people, let's say. So from the top of our heads, we can already brainstorm, like, yes, the users might be freelance interior architects, the users might be bigger agencies, the users might be architecture students. So there's a bunch of them who can actually use the product. But now the question is, great, but where do I start? Like what's the order of the clients that I need to tackle? So one of my personal favorite techniques out there is innovation curve. So innovation curve is something that's usually being applied to the business model, but we can actually look at it through the prism or the view of the end client segmentation as well. So how does innovation curve works is basically making your new and flashy startup idea feel less risky, like how to make it feel more kind of like, yeah, but things have always been this way, like I cannot imagine life without this tool anymore. So innovation curve looks like this in its essence, which is divided into 4 columns. So we would have the innovators, the pioneers, the mainstream, and traditional. And the typical mistake that I see is that we tend to obviously fall in love with our product that we're building, and we're immediately aiming for mainstream or traditional because we really want to get as many users as possible by the end of the day. And then what we found out like along the way is that the users are saying, yes, it's a great product, but they still do not start using that. So how come? So to get closer to the truth of what might be happening is basically laying the information in front of your eyes. So meaning that the product that I showed before, we would brainstorm together with the team who our end users might be. So as we can see here, there's a bunch of categories here. So I already mentioned freelance interior designers. I mentioned architect students, architect superstars, so those are one of a kind. Architects focusing on commercial, so there's a bunch of them. Stay-at-home moms, so we can see different client segmentations. Now what we need to do next is we need to always the talk with the end customers, so the man and the lady example that I gave before. And what we will discover along the way is that we need to cross-check the conversation with those end customers. Where do they actually belong? So innovators usually are people who they feel like they're part of your team. So meaning if you have a conversation with a person who is actually sharing in their social media about your product voluntarily, it means that those guys are your innovators. You should focus on them in the first phases of product development. The pioneers are basically your first customers who are super adventurous. So meaning that it's a quite simple way to see that if you've done your first demo pitch or if you've done your first sales pitch, so whatever tool you have running in the background from Hotjar to FullStory to Google Analytics, those are the people who are actually discovering the corners of your product. So meaning you can segment them here under the pioneers quite well. And this is how it goes. When you have your first innovators in place, you can see that people are voluntarily sharing about your product. And when you see first of your pioneers in place, you would move across the stages from one to another. But you should not lose your focus that one day you're focusing on mainstream and the other day you're focusing on pioneers. So you should always double check, like, this week, did we really spend time with these customer segments? So meaning that the team can discipline itself to see that they're working with the right client segment. And the thing that I suggest to do here is to host a story bank. So meaning it's a simple, you can visualize a simple Excel in front of your eyes. So you put the customer segments on top of on a horizontal line. You would put the innovation curve on a vertical line, and you can cross-check what story to tell who. This is how you can control your customer segments by the end of the day. And usually a question that I get asked a lot is how many people or how many end users should I include per customer segment or per customer focus group? So the answer here is 3 to 5. Why this? Is because you can do it yourself, and what you will discover along the way is that 3 is enough to give you fresh insight, to validate something, but from the 5th person, the information starts to get repetitive already. So meaning that you're just wasting your own valuable time if it's 10 or if it's 20. You can go and do that, but most likely it is not as impactful as focusing on just 3 to 5 per customer segment. And why I put in the end a glass of milk is because, again, something to keep an eye out is because this is work that should be done per quarter, especially in the early days of a startup where pivot might be a high likely chance of doing. So meaning that if you have done your customer segmentation work, let's say in springtime, you should revisit those in the end of summertime, even if not more tightly. So meaning, imagine like pouring a glass of milk, right? So it's not good by the end of the week. You need to drink it and you need to pour it again. So revisit your customer segments every now and then, depending where your startup status is. And that's it for the customer segmentation. So I hope that this simple framework helps to a little bit prioritize and focus a little bit better. Thank you.